Welcome back to Through the Veil. I'm Camille,
I'm Elle.
and today we're going to talk about baby stories, like
Baby stories.
experiences with our children before they were born through the veil via impressions or thoughts, feelings, dreams, whatever, what it may be, and miscarriages. We're going to talk about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
before and after, before life, after life. Both of these things, like the veil covers both ways, right? And we can have those kinds of interesting communications both ways. So, and
yeah.
how timely.
Because Elle just had a baby like a few
So I
weeks
just had a
ago.
baby. Right. She's not with me in the room. She's with dad right now.
We're not
So
going to
we're
have like a
taking a
baby
brief
Simba
break.
moment where you hold her up for all to
Oh,
see.
much anticipated. No, but I did bring a picture. This is little Trinity.
Oh, she's so sweet.
This was a couple of days ago, I think. So she's 3 weeks, 3 weeks old. But yeah, we're gonna start out talking about Trinity because I had so many really amazing experiences before she even got here. Um, and I think now is the time. I don't think we've talked about them openly on this podcast, and I
Mm-mm.
think I've mentioned a few things in the Facebook group, but not the whole story, which is a story.
No, just so you guys know, if you want to be part of the Facebook group, it's called Through the Veil Facebook Community. You can search it, and we have extended conversations about what we talk about on the podcast and
Right.
talk about classes that we're going to be offering in the future. So if you're interested,
Yeah.
that's how you find it.
A lot of our notifications get posted there, and the whole concept behind that is to build the community, right? So you can ask questions, you can engage in conversation, you can tell your own experiences and your own stories, and find other people with like experiences and philosophies and questions. So it's a great place. Come join.
Yeah.
So this particular pregnancy, I want to start off by saying, kind of in context, we were done having kids. We had three. It's a good number. It was my golden ratio number. Like that was, I'm one of three. I think it's pretty well balanced. It's manageable as an adult, as a parent to have three kids, I think. Um, and it's getting more and more uncommon to have a family that's much larger than that, right? So like also affordable. We're military, so movable.
Right?
And all the things. And we had done all of the prayerful consideration like last year, whether or not we were done, whether we felt like there were more kids waiting for us, in on the other side or in the kind of the plan of things. We'd both prayed about it pretty seriously, and the answer kind of came back, "Oh, it's your choice. Like it's your call." And I'm like, I don't know that I can handle more than three. She's like,
Right.
my older two are really ADHD. They're worth two kids, at least one and a half apiece. And they're a lot. And so I was like, I think three's good for my own, well-being as a mother and what I feel like I can give and still maintain quality of parenting. I think we're good here.
Yeah.
So my husband scheduled a vasectomy and we were all at a go to like cut off the pipe work and be done, right? We're out. It must have been the day before the procedure that conception occurred. You want to get it in because you're not going to have any for, I don't know, like 6 weeks or something like that. And so we found out about 4.5 weeks after his procedure that I was pregnant. And I was like, no, we were protected. We did not take chances. And
Yeah.
it generally takes us like 6 months to a year to even get pregnant of
Oh,
planning, right?
I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yeah. Intentional trying for every child, like tracking cycles, using ovulation kits, like all the things. We have to try.
Hmm.
And we were covered down like when business was occurring. We were not taking the chance. So I was like, there's no way that we're pregnant. There's no way. It can't be possible. But they say with prophylactics, they're only 99.9% a surefire, but 0.01%
The
is a
fine
real
print.
danger. That very day, it was probably between midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning where I finally took a pregnancy test because I was like, I'm late. Could be any number of reasons. I'm sure I'm not pregnant. Maybe it's weird hormonal cycles or something. And I went and I woke up my husband and I was like, pregnant. And he's like, what? No. And I was like, yes. And we had this brief conversation. He went to bed and I couldn't go to
I was
bed.
gonna say you
And
couldn't. You're probably stewing.
I was stewing. I was so angry. I was like, God, you told me it was my choice. My choice was no.
Yeah.
You hoisted this upon me. And I was just, there was a lot of emotion behind this because I was just getting a taste of freedom, right? My youngest was about to turn 4. She just did 6 days after this baby was born. She was in preschool, and I was getting ready to like go back into like the career year field, like maybe go back to school or something and get going on all the things that go on pause when you're a parent, right?
Hmm.
And so I had all these grand intentions and plans. So I was staring down the barrel of having another baby, having a newborn, then setting all the clocks back for all of the things that you want to do for yourself for another 4 to 5 years, right?
Yeah.
And I'm no spring chicken, so the clock is ticking. So I was hashing this out with God, and I was pretty upset. I was letting him have it just a little bit, and like he can take it. We had that kind of relationship. And right in the middle of this, me just like railing and being so probably a little more emotional than I should have been about the situation. I feel this bright spirit come into the room where I was sitting on my bed in the dark with my husband sleeping next to me. I feel this bright little spirit, and I would probably equate the energy that she gives like a little sunbeam,
Hmm.
really. Just warm and happy and bright and yellow and like gold and all the things,
Like a lightness.
like a lightness, like a joy. I stopped mid prayer and I was like, oh no, hold up. I was like, is this you? Is this baby? And then I saw very clearly this little girl running through a field. And for me, I will say fields hold significance in transitional experience. So frequently, and we'll get to this later, with miscarriages or with babies who are kind of like in the pipelines to come down, frequently I'll experience them in a field, a green field. Usually they're with someone else who kind of like brings them there, transitioning into earth and then transitioning out of earth. Frequently I will experience this field. And so I was like, there's the field. She's coming. This is her. And she bore a remarkable resemblance to my 3-year-old, her sister at the time. And then very, very clearly I heard Trinity, Trinity, Trinity 3 times. And
Because two times would not be fitting for that name. It has
it
to
would
be
not
three.
be, it
Yeah.
has to be three. So, and you have to understand, we have like an unintentional pattern with our children where their names all begin with T and end with Y. And there are just not many names that follow that pattern for a little girl. And I was like,
Right.
oh no, is this the name? Like, you've even given me a name and it fits the pattern? Like, you're meant to be here. That was the first experience I had with her. And then there were multiple experiences after that where I would just feel her. We have the temple in our faith tradition, which is a really set aside sacred place where we go and we do ordinances and different spiritual work and stuff there. And every time I went to the temple, I would feel her like she was just tagging along right behind us, and she would just come, and as I was sitting there, I would feel her like sit right beside me, and she just gave such joy for the fact that we were there and we were like doing the work and like moving forward the work of God. And every experience I had with her would kind of fall into this category of joy. Like she was like a little sunbeam. Like she
Yeah.
really was. Um, Obviously, I have a lot of friends who also have this gift. People that I've worked with, people that I've trained, people that are just friends who also do this. Every single one of them, individually and together, would experience her in exactly the same way. Even you,
I
Camille.
remember where I was sitting when you texted me about it. I was actually on the toilet, so that was fun.
Full
But I was just
disclosure.
like, it was late at night and I was 2 hours before you, right? Because I was in California last year. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And I just had a feeling. I remember going to my closet and I was still like thinking about it. And I felt her and I was like, it's a girl. And you're like, yeah, I've heard that from other people too. And I'm like, I feel like she's this bright, um, fiery, happy little girl. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
And people would see her all the same way too. She would be in that field and there were yellow flowers everywhere. She had long blonde hair
With a little
and
curl at the bottom.
a little bit of a curl, bright blue
Yeah.
eyes.
And was she wearing a pink dress in some of the people's like what they
Yeah,
saw? Because I feel like there was
she
a
was
pink
wearing a
dress from
dress.
what I saw. Okay.
Mhm. And she always came through with the same personality and always looked exactly the same, which fits like my
Yeah.
kids are blonde too.
Right. She had this like freeness to her,
Right.
this
Yeah.
individuality. It was really beautiful.
And a lot of them would frequently say that she was going to be like have my gifts, like carry these things forward.
That's
So
right.
it's just interesting how many similarities would occur with everyone's experiences of her individually, right? That backed up my own experiences, seeing her every single time. There were a couple of moments where, as I was dealing with these struggles and like my own family baggage and things that have, come up again and again with parenting and with kids and things like that, I was really worried about all of the things that come in with having a newborn, introducing them to your family structure and all the changes and stuff that occur. And one night I was doing some scripture study and I felt her little spirit bouncing in. She's always bouncing around. And she told me very, very distinctly, um, like, I'm sorry that you're having a hard time with this. If you only knew what you knew before you came here, you would know that this was always planned and that I was always yours. I was meant to be your daughter and you were meant to be my mother. And we had decided this. We knew each other before you got here. And I've been waiting. It was like the most tender, most sweet, like damaging moment because I was sitting there like, I don't want to be pregnant. I don't want to have a baby. And she comes in with all this light and joy. And she's like, if you only could remember. And
Yeah.
that just like hit me in the heart. It was
Right.
like a full gut punch, and it sat with me for 9 months. A couple of weeks after that, she came back in another experience. I won't go into full detail about it because it's quite a special experience, but I'll kind of just generally say I was having another one of those angry prayers with God. It was actually kind of a conciliatory repentance type prayer. It's like really having an emotional day, and I was kind of like expressing sorriness, like repentance about the behavior, particularly with my children who'd been difficult that day. And this visionary experience just like hit me in the face out of nowhere, where I felt like I was transported into the place that spirits are before they come here. In our faith tradition, we call that the pre-existence. It's, the pre-world, the pre-earth
Right.
life.
Preparation.
And I was I experienced knowing my husband before we came and seeing him for everything that he was, the light that he was before he came here. And then her little spirit came in and goes, I was here too, and I knew dad and I knew you. And just like another witness of, and we knew each other. And so like I know you and you know me and he knows me. And we were a family. We were meant to be a family. We were waiting to be a family until we could all be here together at the same time, which honestly, those two experiences have completely changed my life in transformative ways. Thinking about like the structure of why we're here and who we're here with and what we're doing in a really personal way. And seeing her now as this little newborn baby who's come here and has this veil, forgets all the things or is forgetting all the things,
Yeah.
has no control of her body or awareness of like the world around her and is like figuring things out. It's a completely strange experience to kind of like have the situation flipped. She was watching me
Yeah.
as I was here learning and growing and preparing to be her mom for 30, almost
Yeah.
36 years. And then now, um, me having just that insight of knowledge that she was there and she knew that and she knew me before I got here. And then she
Mm-hmm.
watched it all be undone and me have to relearn who I was, right? And then I get to see her go through that same process on this side of the veil.
Yeah.
It's just like mind twisting.
You're gonna know her better than she's gonna know herself because you felt her intelligence, right?
Right.
Before she was born and her maturity and wisdom and
Yeah.
mentoring even.
Yeah, and I am going to have to watch her rediscover that. And it's my job as her mother to protect her and guide her through that process so that she can become everything that she had the potential that she always wanted to be, right? Before
Yeah.
she even knew what life was going to be like when she got here.
Well, and it's really interesting, this concept. It's hitting me in the heart really hard today because this morning I had a session with a couple whose son passed away as a child when he was 7. And they have had experiences where they feel like this was the plan for him. He was supposed to
Hmm.
cross over and he has work that he's doing on the other side. And he feels that purpose too. In the session we
Yeah.
did today, he shared this excitement, this purpose, and being on fire about it. And he said something really specific. He said, "This will all make sense later, how this was a good plan for our family,
Yeah.
and how this was maybe the best plan for our family, the right plan for our family." And it hit home for me because with my son passing, I've had similar experiences. And it's that flip flopping of roles where my son, who passed when he was only 3, I feel his spirit older now a lot of the times, like a young man,
Yeah.
20, 19, 20, 21. And often I feel he is mentoring me. Um, and it's a humbling thing as a parent because I remember specifically he liked to go places with me. He was like a ride or die kid. I'm going to the grocery store. He has a chance to stay home with dad who works from home or come with me. He likes to go places. And I think I was volunteering at like my first graders, in my first graders class. And I couldn't bring him with me as my sidekick because I'm a volunteer at the elementary school. I'm helping kids with
Right.
their reading skills. And so it's best for him to stay home with dad. I can't take him. But he didn't understand that because he's only 3. And so he would come to the door so excited when I would be pulling out of the garage in my van and be like, "Mom, can I come?" Like, no shoes on. It's wintertime, like in shorts and a t shirt. "Mom, can I come?" And I'm like, "I'm so sorry, Wes. You can't come. I have to go." And then he'd be like, "Why can't I come?" And he's starting to cry. And I'm like, "Go see dad. Like, I can't bring you, buddy. And I feel bad leaving him there crying, but I'm going to be late. Like, he just, needs to go talk to dad about it. He'll be fine. Dad's working like, one room away. And it still broke my heart and I felt bad about it. And that would happen a few times because he was always wanting to go places. And I've had experiences since my son passed, even last night, where I had a cool experience feeling him really close and hearing him like talk to me. Um, and I was working out some things that I've been dealing with lately and just praying. And then I felt Wesley come in. I started to talk to Wes about it, my son. And I felt him there with me. Like we were having a little conversation. And then I felt him, like his spirit start to retract. And I was like, "Oh no, was I not listening well enough? Like, was I talking too much? Why is he leaving right now?" And I just felt like he had somewhere he needed to be, but I was kind of already emotional. And I was like, "Why is he leaving? Can't you stay longer?" Like, I felt like that little kid that had been dumped at the doorstep. And I was like, "I don't understand. Why can't you stay with me?" And he's like, "You don't get it. I'm an adult. You're a kid. Like, you don't get it. Things are different on the other side. I can't explain it to you." And I was like, "Oh, I hate that feeling of just being left." But it's a reversal where
Yeah.
you can't explain like in word. I mean, "I gotta go do this thing. I gotta go, mom." And I'm just like, "Oh, I wish I could go with him. And I can't."
Yeah. It's a flip perspective that is
Yeah,
such
it's
a
very
very,
humbling.
it's a paradoxical thing, right?
Yeah,
To think about that we feel like this world, this life that we're experiencing, this presentness, this is it. Like this is the moment, right? We're here and it's so important and it's so big and it is. It is. But
yeah,
on the other hand, we have such a very narrow view of
yeah.
what this is and what it is going on and stuff. And they have a bit more of an expanded understanding. And it's so interesting. Most of my work, most of the time, is with people that are already transitioned through life, right? They're on the other side of that veil. And having it juxtaposed next to the experience of this little pre-earth spirit who was up there. It's like naive, but not naive, in a different
Right. There's
way.
this
Because
innate
she's
wisdom, but there's still this
right.
youthfulness and lightness.
But she doesn't have any idea what mortality is or like prepare
Really
yourself,
doesn't
child.
really know what it's like. Yeah.
Right. And so now she gets here and she's an infant and like she is hungry for the first time or she's like struggling to poop for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, she's got gas or something. And it's like experiencing pain and discomfort and cold and hunger and birth, like
Hmm.
all these things. Um, is new and the understanding isn't there yet. And so it's a very interesting thing to experience the transition and the necessary change in human progression through this big plan that God
Yeah.
has for us, right? From all the sides. And we have to move through all of them. And there is a plan. I had some other interesting experiences with her. First of all, let me state I went on this trip to Sedona with a couple of other friends I have who also do spirit communication. And while we were there, we did all kinds of the spirity things, right? We did a sound bath,
Yeah.
we did the vortexes, we did all the things because that's what you do when you're in Sedona. And all of them experienced this little Trinity,
Oh,
and
she's just so
she
vocal.
she was so present throughout the entire 9 months, everywhere, with anyone who would listen. And on top of one of the vortexes, we were all standing about. If you've ever been to Sedona, the whole premise is that it is one of those places where the energy of Earth is very strong and it connects to like the heaven. These things they reach. And so there are a couple of places that are thought to have really strong kind of like channels of energy. They call them vortexes. Um, and one of them we went to, it's on top of a mesa, so it overlooks the entire surrounding area. It's a little tiny bit of a hike to get up there. But it was a really strong, strong energy for for 5 people who are very sensitive to energy.
Yeah.
And while we were up there, all of them looked at me and they go, "Your baby's here, like Trinity is here." And one of them put her hands on my belly and she's like, "Have you ever thought about Joy as the middle name?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh." Because every single person who ever had an experience with her would describe her as joyful, as
Yeah.
being joy, like as that little sunbeam, right?
And I was going to ask you
And
how you guys decided on it's perfect, but I was going to ask you where it came from.
and then I felt her little spirit go, "That's my middle name." So I was like, so we don't even get to pick?
Yeah. You
Like,
didn't get to pick her name at all. It was picked by your
not
friend
at
and
all.
by her.
Not at all. Yeah, and for our other girl, both of our boys have middle names that are named after family names. And so for our other little girl, she has a Chinese middle name because I speak Chinese and I spent some time overseas. And my husband speaks Spanish and spent 2 years in a Spanish speaking country. And so we were thinking about maybe picking like a Spanish middle name. And she was like, "No, it's Joy." And I was like, "I don't really love the word joy in Spanish." She's like, "No, it's joy." I
Trinity
was like,
Hoya. Yeah, I know.
so everywhere after that, we would see the name Joy or the word Joy, like signs down the street. Like people would be like, "Joy, I love that name," and I'd be like, "That's the name my baby was." Like just everywhere, everywhere, signs everywhere. Like she wouldn't take no, right? And then Trinity would also be everywhere. She wouldn't take no for an answer on those names. So that's kind of how the name thing plays. And she picked her own name and she was like definite on it. And then when she was born, um, she was a Trinity. Like we had other names we were considering. There's
I
the whole
know. And
moral
I was like, you
quandary.
can't ditch Trinity.
It's just like she won't really remember she wanted that name, right? I don't hate it, but I don't love it. Like
Yeah.
should I not be able to have some say in the matter? Like, really? But no, when she was born, I looked at my husband and he looked at me and we're like, "She's a Trinity." And he's like, "Yep." So true to suit. She even picked her name. Um, but I had a lot of anxiety, hormones and things after she was born about newborn infants. Were you the kind of mother, I feel like most mothers are, when you have an infant and they're so new and it's almost like there's a doubt that their body is working the right way, so you have to like check on them. Like, are you breathing? Are you still alive? Like,
Um, I
tickle them.
especially did that with Wesley. I had this inherent fear he was going to die, which maybe
Yeah,
was me tapping into the information field because he was going to die a few years later.
premonition, foreshadowing.
Yeah, I really was so worried. We brought him home from the hospital, and I was just so worried he was going to somehow die because he was
Yeah,
so extra sweet. I was like, he surely like
it's too sweet.
too good to be true, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I do that with all my babies, especially when they're sleeping. You know, when they're really deep asleep and they don't twitch or move or anything, and you're like, "Are you breathing?"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Give you a poke and see like
Right.
if you
Right.
move your little arms or something.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I don't know, something about because I had never doubted the whole pregnancy that there would be a problem or that she wouldn't make it because I felt so strongly that she needed to be here.
Hmm.
Then I was seized by this anxiety after she was here. I was like, well, was that it? Is she here
Mm.
now? And so she's done? Like, is
Yeah.
there a possibility that she's not going to stay? And I had a couple of moments where I felt other spirits come in and be like, no, the plan is for her to be here. There was one night, you know, you don't sleep when you have a newborn. So I was probably pretty sleep deprived. My
Hmm.
parents were here and my mother was downstairs with her, and she would pull like the first night shift from between 9 and like 1 or 2 in the morning with the baby so that we could get some sleep. But she was laying with Trinity on her chest, facing downward. And I was like, this is a SIDS risk. Like, we can't do that. And she's like,
Yeah.
I had 3 children. They all were like this. It was fine, right? But that anxiety, and I'm like, she's gonna suffocate your giant voluptuousness. So I I went upstairs to try to go to sleep, and then I woke up in a panic because I was like, I gotta go check on the baby. And I felt my grandmother come in very, very strongly, and I felt her put her hand on my shoulder, and she was just like, I've got it. I'm watching the situation. Like, she'll be okay because I'm gonna be there. And I was just like, thanks, Grandma. And I went back to
Takes a
sleep.
village, it really does. Yeah.
It does. And I was like, how beautiful this testimony of the moment that like the other side is watching them too. Like they are there, they're protecting them. They're aware of the moment and they're keeping them safe. And I had another experience just a week later after that that literally, I don't know, she probably saved her from severe injury. Um, she was in a swing, one of the new swings that have like the central pedestal kind of like on one end of the egg-shaped swing part, like a
Yeah.
mamaru. Um, and this particular swing has this very poorly designed feature where if you pick it up, it collapses because it like shifts so that you can
Oh,
sit the baby up. Only
yeah.
there's no lock on it. I'm like, who designed this? This is terrible.
Yeah.
Um, so we had the swing in the kitchen and we all had moved into the living room. And I had asked my husband to go get the baby and bring the swing in the living room because that's where we all were. But he was upstairs. He didn't hear me. So my dad was like, I'll go get her. And so he went in there to pick her up. And I had this moment of knowledge of like, you need to go in there with him right now. And I can't remember what I was doing. Of course, I ignored it. I was like, oh, but he'll get it. He's fine. It was less than probably 10 seconds later. We heard something fall and like collapse. And then my dad went, oh, and I jumped up and ran in there. My mom jumped up and ran in there. And what had happened was he picked up the swing and it collapsed while she was in it. And she fell out. She rolled out. My dad is 6'8". It's quite a fall to the floor for a
Yeah.
2-week-old baby.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I didn't see what happened, and he was too shaken up to really describe in detail what had occurred. But she had rolled out, and he had caught her in his very large hands right before she hit the floor. And so she started screaming, and my dad was shaking. We were all very upset, and I took her, and she was fine. I was worried about like whiplash or something because you know they have very tender little necks.
Yeah.
And she ended up being perfectly fine. And it took us all a minute to kind of calm down with that and assure everyone that everybody was okay. And later, I was up in my bathroom and I was thinking about this terrifying experience. Like my baby almost being dropped from quite a high height. And I felt my grandmother come in again and she was like, I told you, like I'm watching after her. Like I protected her in that moment when she fell. And she had some hand in her being caught by my father. And that was again like a really sweet and validating experience of like it's not her time. Like I'm watching her. I am here and I'm going to keep her safe.
Yeah.
And I was like, thanks, Grandma.
Right.
Thank
And
you for that.
we need that as moms because with doing the work that the Ellen I do, we see people that lose children at various ages.
Right.
Um, a lot of the situations where we are connecting, it's not to someone's elderly grandparent. Sometimes we do that, but a lot of times people that die before you would expect them to, and it was
Right.
alarming, unusual. And I've had experiences where, you know, naturally, as after losing my son, I would be concerned about the next baby, like just feel that extra vulnerability. And I've had confirmations where, the spirit has said that's not his plan.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same story. Right. And so that, that truth that some people, yeah, their life was only supposed to last for 4 years or 7 years or 42 years. But
Yeah.
most people, I mean, most people are not going to have that story. It is kind of the exception to the rule. We're just so used to seeing it.
We see it a lot.
See it a lot. We
Hazard of
see
the
it a lot.
occupation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. We get comfortable with it until it's like it could be our story. I mean, I don't want that. Right.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people having experienced grief, they have the question of like, well, why was it mine? You know, why wasn't my grandma there to stop that from occurring with my child, right? And it goes back to what you just said with Wes of like, I can't, it was my plan. Like that was my plan, and I can't tell you why that's going to be best for our family now. But
Mm-hmm.
at some point, you're going to know,
At some
like,
point, it's going to all make sense.
and you
You're
have
going
to
to say,
just,
oh, okay. Yeah. That
yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
And it seems like a trite thing to say when you're in a point of loss and grief, right? To
It's
say
definitely not something
there's
you want to say to somebody in the first, couple months, maybe a couple
or
years
year
down the, yeah.
or two.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just take it from me and from Camille, like it has been my experience the vast majority of the time that they get to understand why after they pass. Like they get to know why most of the time that that happened and that occurred. And it is for the greater good, not just for them, but for the family, for a wider experience of why. Kind of feeling into miscarriages. We have a friend, for instance, and she has a really hard time with pregnancy. She has a half uterus, so it only works well half the time, right? Like she will miscarry frequently. I think she had somewhere in the range of like 7 miscarriages, some of them pretty far along. And there was one miscarriage in particular where it was a very, very difficult experience for her. And I mean, every time you wonder why it happens, why it doesn't stick, especially when you've been hoping and longing and trying so hard for children, right? Um, Many years after she's also quite gifted, and she had began to have experiences with this little spirit. It was a girl, and this little girl made it known to her and to me and several other people. And it's always very interesting when you have validation, individual validation, the same story pops up with different people who haven't spoken to each other but
Right.
get the same information, right? It's like the law of witnesses. And this little girl, she had a name too. Her name was Lily. And um, she told her through a couple of different people, the story came up again and again, that she didn't need to be here to get what she needed out of her mortal experience. Just having that body in utero was enough to be able to have that embodiment. And then she had a greater purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that greater purpose was to help her mother, through mortality, and then to help grandchildren through mortality,
Yeah.
and that she will be their guiding angel. She will be that person who saves their babies from falling swings.
Yeah,
Like,
it's true. I
yeah,
feel like every family needs guardian angels, and sometimes those guardian angels come from the immediate family.
right. And how beautiful. I mean, a lot of times we experience loss and we don't get to understand why, but sometimes we do. And how beautiful and how miraculous and how tender of a mercy those experiences are, to get to know. That's why she's not here right now. But right now is only a blip in, you know, a grain of sand in the whole sand castle of what eternity is going to be, right? And she will have moments and experiences, and she will get to know this baby, and this baby probably knew her before as well, right? before they both came here, like my experience with Trinity. And she will know her now, and she will know her after this life. And she will be there for her and for her grandchildren as they also grow up. Particularly, she mentioned it, a female granddaughter as she was growing up too.
Because our
And
friend, this friend only has sons. So
only has sons.
yeah. So it's special. Like she's never had a daughter on Earth, right?
Just such a sweet and beautiful experience. Even they have a plan, right?
Yeah.
And that plan often works for the greater good of not just them, but everyone else involved. Because God doesn't just do things for one reason. He is like the master of one stone and like a flock of birds, right? There's always that the ripple effect of how things influence many, many people with everything that he does because he loves all of his children.
So some people, they have experiences where they have a miscarriage and they feel through some type of spiritual experience, they feel that that child um, tries again, so to speak, and becomes a future child. So I had a miscarriage in between my first two kids. It was a really strange experience. It was so early on. I was just in the shower and I noticed something that fell out of my body and it looked like a zygote on a strand. It looked like something that belonged in a biology textbook. And I, this was before like things were the digital era. I was 2008. And so I didn't take a picture of it or anything. I called my doctor and I explained what happened. And he said, "Oh, it sounds like you had a such and such miscarriage where it just all comes out um so early on." And I was like, okay. And I remember feeling I was nauseous before that. So I had the signs of pregnancy. And then after it fell out, I had no more signs of pregnancy. And even though I wasn't planning on getting pregnant, because I already had a baby girl and I was gonna wait till I had my next kid, it was still really emotional for me. It really caught me off guard. And I remember about a year later, my son was born. Not a year and a half, because we weren't ready to have kids yet. We were going to wait a little. And I had this feeling that that misfire, it didn't have a spirit in it. It was a zygote. It wasn't even, there was no heartbeat. But that my son was going to, hit just, it was just too early. And my son would be coming, and that was the same, like that was the purpose. So that zygote was supposed to be my son, and that wasn't the right time.
When we're talking about things like miscarriage from a spiritual perspective, especially a through the veil perspective, I don't want there to be any misunderstanding that we have all the answers about why these things happen or who these kids are or anything. Like it's not it's not always the case that we're like, oh, you have a miscarriage? Let's talk to this baby. Like sometimes they'll come through and sometimes they won't. I had two or three miscarriages in I think I had one in between each of my children at various points, usually early. And some of them were a highly anticipated pregnancy that didn't come through and had its own set of emotional baggage, right? But I have never had a spirit come through and identify itself to me with one of those miscarriages. But I do have people that I sit with that do, right? Sometimes. And sometimes we have scenarios where this child will move straight through the veil, like in the situation with our friend, and be on the other side. And that was their plan. That was their
That's their
purpose,
journey.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And then you have other circumstances, where maybe the timing wasn't right. Maybe, I don't know, the genetics weren't right. Something didn't happen correctly with the body. And then they wait, they hang out, and then they come back again when everything does line up correctly. That
Right.
does occur as well.
Yeah, we have another good friend who she had a pretty far along miscarriage, and she had a name and she a gender, and the baby it died in utero, and she had a really strong spiritual experience where she knew that that baby girl was going to come back and she would be able to give birth to that child, a healthy baby, and raise that little girl. So that's a scenario. But like Al said, we don't have answers to everything. These are a
Right.
handful of stories. Lots of times we don't know why things happen and where that spirit is, and we just, we have to live off of faith. We're not going to have all the answers here.
Right. And in that circumstance, our friend does feel like that baby did come back. It took quite a few years, I think, but recently she just had a baby and she had a very strong sense this was the same little girl who
Yeah.
came back again. And her timing was right, and she was ready to come and to be here and to be in their family now.
So, like we were saying, there's a whole myriad of stories with babies. Babies that come through healthily and get to live long lives, babies that come through and pass away, babies that pass in utero, babies that maybe you sense are coming or a part of your family, but they haven't manifested yet. And you don't know how they fit into the plan. Like wherever you are in your own messy middle, we just want to leave you with encouragement that God has a plan, um, that promises that are still maybe not fulfilled will eventually, maybe not in the timeline that we perceive, because like our ability to perceive time in this life, when you look at the whole scope of things, it's so finite. We don't really understand everything that there is, what comes next, and how time was measured before, and everything. But just to offer some solidarity, we've had lots of unique experiences ourselves, having experiences with our kids through the veil, before they were born, after they pass. And it's a sensitive topic for moms, like this pulls at your heartstrings, like,
And dads.
and dads too. Yeah, it really does. It makes us very vulnerable when we have these precious babies that we are here to look after. And so maybe you find some of your story in our stories.
And I want to leave kind of a witness. Again, if you're in that messy middle, or if you feel like you've kind of come to the end of that, but still have a tender place in your heart about it. Um, One of the really beautiful things personally, probably the most beautiful thing personally that I have gained out of the development of my own gifts and the push that the Lord has put on me to develop these gifts in all the different ways that it's been applicable is that I have such a strong belief and witness that there is a plan behind these things. None of this is senseless. It might feel like that at the time, in the moment, and maybe even for a prolonged period of time after, but none of it is senseless. And there's a purpose, a greater purpose behind all of it, and an intelligent design. And there's usually something cumulative building towards the greater good of not just ourselves, but of our families and of humanity in general. And we get only the smallest glimpse of that, but enough of a glimpse for me to fully believe that is the case, no matter what your story is or where you are in that story. If you've had experiences through the veil with children you've lost, miscarried children, even children to come, like Camille stated, um, please lean into that. It happens. And I want to validate you in your experience that
Yeah,
it happens
you're not
and
going
that they
crazy.
do reach out to us. Yeah. Um, and if you would like to connect with us, like always, please feel free to do so. All of our connection points are in the information below. You can also find us at our website, which is
Throughtheveilpodcast.com. And we also have a Facebook group that you can find from our website. You can join the community and continue the conversation there.
you can email us or reach out in any way. We would love to hear your stories as well. Please remember that you can like and subscribe, comment below. We do love comments. We'd love to hear from you. Your stories are always the reason we do this,
Yeah.
right? So feel free to reach out, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.